You could be unknowingly undermining your professional growth through a seemingly innocent habit, sharing details of your personal life with everyone. Each time you discuss your struggles, your efforts to evolve, or how someone has wronged you, you believe you're lightening your load. But in truth, you're solidifying a limiting self-image that holds you back. You're retelling an old story with the same ending. Then you live as if you are that story itself. Not everyone needs to know what you're going through. Not everyone has the depth to understand, and more importantly, not everyone deserves access to the private corners you so easily give away in conversation. To truly advance in your career and life, embrace silence as your foundation. Avoid constantly broadcasting your every move. Don't confuse talking about change with actually making it happen. Those who act more in quiet command greater respect than those who talk endlessly without follow-through. In this video, discover how to wield silence as a tool of empowerment, not a veil of fear. If this message resonates with you, leave a comment below with, "I am a Stoic practitioner." Share a moment when silence fueled your growth. And above all, subscribe to the channel to never miss lessons that help you live with greater strength, wisdom, and peace. Quietly, yet with an undeniable presence. First, the more you vocalize your pain, the more you reinforce it. You've seen someone scratch at a healing wound. Initially, it's a response to discomfort, but over time, it becomes a habit, and if they persist, the scar remains etched forever. We do the same with mental pain, but instead of scratching, we repeat it verbally. We recount the hurt, replay the disappointments, rehearse the betrayals, failures, and shame until it's no longer a story we tell, but a role we embody. The mind doesn't take repetition lightly. It's a pattern-seeking machine. The more frequently you discuss something, especially your pain, the more your brain embeds it as part of your core identity. It shifts from something that happened to who you fundamentally are. From there, you construct your thoughts, behaviors, and even relationships around that narrative. You start seeking validation for that pain. And guess what? You'll find it. Because once the pain becomes your script, the world starts playing along. This is the hidden risk in oversharing, especially about deep wounds. Every conversation is a stage. Every friend, an audience, and each retelling embeds the story deeper into your nervous system. You believe you're processing it, but you're actually rehearsing it, rehearsing a stance of helplessness. You master the victim role, not out of desire to suffer, but because expressing it offers fleeting relief. Yet relief isn't healing. Relief is evasion. Healing is silence, reflection, and gradual internal reconstruction. Healing starts when you stop feeding the pain with words, because the more you talk about it, the more attached you become, and the more attached, the harder it is to let go. Stoics understood this long before modern psychology named it. They weren't cold or emotionless. They simply refused to invest energy in things beyond their control, especially when it comes to repeating wounds. For them, words are a precise action. You use them to clarify, not to indulge, to build, not to bleed. And when facing pain, they teach a form of powerful restraint, not suppression, but redirection. Because silence isn't weakness, it's a strategy. It's how you end the mental chaos and reclaim inner peace. Today, many confuse openness with strength. They believe telling everyone their pain is courage, But true courage is sitting with discomfort without turning it into your character, allowing pain to exist without making it a performance. This doesn't mean you must bottle everything up, but you need to carefully select who, when, and why you speak. Ask yourself, do I need help or just validation? Do I want to heal or just to be heard, because those aren't the same? One propels you forward, the other traps you in a cycle, wearing your wounds like badges you never wanted but now can't remove. There's an inner strength that only builds in silence. Those who practice this start to transform. They no longer need to revisit their pain because they don't view themselves through the lens of suffering. They speak less, but each word carries weight. Their energy stops leaking through complaints or venting. It accumulates, becoming a quiet force the world senses even without words. That's the power of not oversharing. That's the discipline of silence. And that, whether you call it stoicism or simply maturity, separates those who repeat old stories from those who finally transcend them. 2. Change without an audience is more powerful. Have you ever wondered, if no one knows I'm changing, am I really changing? That quiet question reveals something profound. We've been convinced that growth must be witnessed to be real, that if no one sees your evolution, it holds no value. But the truth many avoid is this: the most powerful and lasting changes happen away from the spotlight. You don't need spectators to become who you're meant to be. You just need persistence, clear direction, and the discipline to shield your progress from unnecessary attention. In today's world, nearly every moment is publicized. People showcase their first workout, new meditation habit, or updated morning routine. Day one becomes content to post. But what if you choose silence over sharing? What if you change without documenting, explaining, or needing support or applause? At first, it might feel odd, even empty, because we're accustomed to drawing emotional energy from others' hearts, claps, comments. But when no one knows, when it's just you and the work, you begin to see the truth. You distinguish between performing and practicing. Real, deep, enduring change doesn't need validation to exist. It needs space. It needs to breathe, free from judgment. It needs quiet to take root. And when that happens, it becomes a silent power emanating from you in ways words can't describe. You don't need to announce your shift to be recognized. One day, people will sense it through how you enter a room, how you converse with calm, and a presence no longer carrying old storms. That's the outcome when you evolve for yourself, not for reactions from others. I recall someone I know. He never spoke about what he was doing. No loud declarations. No new year. New me. But after a few months, I noticed the difference. He paused before responding. He listened more than he spoke. His words became precise. His eyes held a steady resolve. Later, I learned he meditated daily, journaled, cut digital noise, and rebuilt himself quietly. That transformation didn't need a stage. It just needed commitment. Now he lives with a grounded energy that's impossible to fake or rush. Stoics call this self-reliance. They believed in the power of internal transformation, the kind that doesn't require permission or praise. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to impress. He wrote to sharpen his mind and soul. Epictetus didn't share philosophy for followers. He shared because truth lived must be internalized, not performed. This is the distinction between emotional independence and dependence, When your evolution is silent, it belongs to you. When it craves attention, it's fragile. So the challenge for you: if you couldn't tell anyone what you're doing, would you continue? Would you wake early, retrain your mind, protect your peace in a stoic way, even if no one notices? If the answer is yes, you've won, because the strongest changes aren't noisy, seeking applause. They grow quietly, day by day, becoming part of you, not something to showcase, but something to live. Let others post updates. They narrate every small step. You don't need to join. You're not falling behind. You're building strength in silence, where it's hardest to fake and most authentic to feel. When change no longer needs to be seen to matter, that's when it becomes permanent. And when the energy you use isn't for explaining, but for becoming the new you, that's when the shift becomes your identity. At that point, no one needs to ask. If you've changed, they'll know without a word from you. 3. You don't need to recount your evolution process. Your brain is smarter than you think, but also more easily fooled than you imagine. Studies show that when you talk about your plans, the brain often releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical, as if you've already accomplished them. You get a sense of satisfaction, a feeling of progress without any real movement. That's why talking too soon about goals feels good. But that's also the trap. Every time you say, "I'm getting serious this time," you steal a bit of your motivation. You trick the system into thinking the work has started when nothing has changed. Instead of letting results speak, you let words lead. And too often words don't keep up with actions. This is the hidden risk in sharing your evolution story too early. It's like popping champagne at the mountain's base just because you decided to climb. You celebrate the decision, not the effort, not the slow, persistent step by step. When the initial excitement fades, you're still at the base, wondering why the summit remains distant. The truth is, when your transformation becomes something you talk about more than build, you're not evolving, you're performing. And a performance rarely leads to lasting change. In an era craving social validation, we're trained to share every step. But growth doesn't need a microphone. It needs discipline. It needs quiet repetition. It needs inner strength that doesn't require recognition. If you're serious about becoming stronger, calmer, better at controlling thoughts and reactions, you must master advancing in silence. That silence protects your energy. It allows you to focus not on being seen, but on being transformed. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations to impress others. He wrote to stay grounded. He knew evolution isn't something you declare, it's something you live. Stoics knew that progress shared too soon gets diluted. It turns into noise. And noise doesn't create clarity, it obscures. They believed in personal discipline over public display, because when change is real, you don't need to tell anyone. It will show itself. Others will notice. But more importantly, you'll feel it. You'll feel it in how you respond instead of react, how you detach from outcomes, how you maintain peace through emotional discipline. That doesn't need explaining. It's what you demonstrate. So next time you want to post about your new mindset, declare goals, or tell friends you're taking control. Pause. Ask yourself, do I need to say this? Or do I need to do it? Am I seeking commitment or just applause? Because they're not the same. One builds from inner discipline. The other erodes from attention. If it's real, it can wait. If it's true, It doesn't need declaration. There's a dignity in silent transformation, a power in not being driven to explain. When you keep your process private and work quietly, it roots deeply. It becomes solid. It stands firm without praise. Stoic thinking isn't about hiding, it's about honoring. Honoring your path without distraction. Choosing the road of invisible strength. The more you talk about your evolution, the more fragile it becomes. But when you stop talking about what you're building and just focus on building, you create something unshakable. Not everyone needs to know what you're changing, but if the change is real, eventually they won't need forewarning. They'll sense it. And so will you. Retelling old stories keeps you trapped in them. You've probably met someone like that. The person who shows up at gatherings and never stops retelling the same old tale. The old job that never valued him. The relationship that ended unfairly. The time he was misunderstood, overlooked, or betrayed. You've heard it. Everyone has. But he keeps telling it as if repeating will change how it feels. But the issue isn't the painful story, it's that he doesn't realize he's still living in it long after it's over. He's not just recounting the past, he's building his identity around it, whether aware or not. Each retelling reinforces it. It gradually becomes the reality he carries. The truth is, we all carry an internal script, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, but always there, whispering lines like, "I always mess things up," "People like me don't get ahead," or "I'm not a leader." We don't just say these to others, we repeat them in our heads. And each time, we tighten the chains binding us to an outdated version of ourselves, like acting in a play where the stage has changed. The audience shifted, but we refuse to update the role. We keep playing the failure, even as life turns to a new page. What we repeat becomes belief, and that belief shapes what we allow ourselves to become. That's why the stories you tell about yourself matter more than you think. They're not harmless. They're not simple. They're blueprints. They determine how you respond, what you expect, and whether you try at all. If you keep telling failure stories, you'll live as someone who always fails. Not because you are, but because your mind believes the script and your actions operate accordingly. Stoics understood the power of this internal dialogue. They didn't obsess over the past because it can't be changed. What matters is your current judgment, the thoughts you choose in this moment. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." If you keep judging yourself by old chapters, you'll never write the next one. And sometimes, to start fresh, all you need is this: stop saying it. Stop complaining about bad luck. Stop saying you're always overlooked. Stop telling everyone you're bad at relationships, money, or leadership. Those aren't truths, they're loops. Each time you say them, you replay the old film. Imagine holding a pen, but rereading the first page instead of writing new ones. Stoic thinking teaches you to pick up the pen and start anew, not with grand declarations, not with false optimism, but with a small, steady decision to stop retelling the story you no longer want to live. Because the moment you stop telling, you start creating something new, not instantly, not loudly, but quietly and intentionally, word by word, choice by choice. So, next time you want to explain yourself through the past's lens, pause. Ask, is this who I am now, or just who I was? If the latter, let it go. You don't owe anyone a repeated old story. owe yourself a chance to become the version that no longer needs it. The power of silence isn't evasion. It's choosing not to repeat what's no longer useful. And that's emotional clarity. That's the start of inner transformation. Not with more words, but with fewer. Not by justifying the past, but by refusing to relive it. Acquiesce décision. One step at a time. Ask yourself silently, if you're doing it for you, do you need to say it? If no one praises your change, will you continue? That question is deeper than many are ready to face, as it reveals if your growth is internal or just a performance for recognition. In a world obsessed with attention, refining yourself in silence feels foreign. But in that silence and unseen progress, your most powerful transformation begins. Real change doesn't need a stage. It doesn't crave approval. It doesn't need broadcasting, likes, or comments. It just needs authenticity. When you start releasing what no longer serves you, toxic habits, emotional dependencies, or a self-image dominated by past pain, and you do it not to impress, but to find peace, that's the kind of change that endures. You're not trying to prove anything. You're simply realigning yourself. You don't need a post about your recovery process. You don't need others to know. You've started studying philosophy, exercising at 6 a.m., or journaling at night. What matters is you do it quietly, consistently, without the spotlight. I once knew a man completely lost after a messy divorce. He didn't talk about it. No public recovery plans. But slowly and silently, he rebuilt his life. He took up boxing not to brag, but to reclaim his strength. He started cooking not for photos, but to be present in his own life. He read philosophy not to quote, but to learn how to think again. 6 months later, people noticed the change, not because he said anything, but because his energy shifted. His posture changed. His presence became solid, not from muscles, recipes, or Stoic quotes, but from the quiet peace that comes from rebuilding solely for himself. That's the power of self-directed change. It carries a different weight. It holds stillness. And when you no longer need applause for what you do, your actions stop being empty gestures and become genuine habits. There's something sacred in doing right when no one's watching. It means you act from integrity, not ego. You don't chase relevance. You choose essence. That's what Stoic philosophy guides you toward, not loud proclamations, but qui est conviction. Marcus Aurelius lived that way. His journal wasn't for others to read, it was to remind himself, not to impress. He didn't need to convince anyone of his discipline. His life reflected it. That's the deeper lesson. When you do for yourself, you don't need to voice it. It will show, not in the way social media teaches through images, captions, or milestones, but through how you carry yourself, how you face chaos, how your calm quiets others' noise. Let go of the urge to recount everything. When you change, keep that transformation private until it's strong enough for people to feel it without a word from you. That's how you safeguard your peace. That's how you build inner maturity in silence. If someone notices, great. If not, even better. Because you didn't do it for them. You do it because something inside won't accept stagnation. That's self-discipline, forging true identity. That's strength no one can give or take away. Next time you want to explain, prove, déclare pause, ask, am I doing this for me or to be seen if truly for me? Keep it sacred. Let it grow in silence and trust that real change, the lasting kind, doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be lived. 6. Not everyone deserves to know your deepest self. You've surely felt it, that subtle disappointment when you open up to someone, sharing something profound, but they respond with indifference, maybe a shrug, a dismissive remark like, "You think that's bad? I've been through worse," or a blank stare that makes your vulnerability feel excessive. That's the moment teaching you a hard but vital lesson. Not everyone deserves entry into your inner world. When you hand someone your soul's map and they treat it like a crumpled receipt, you start understanding why silence is sometimes sacred. We live in a culture that glorifies openness, where sharing is seen as the cure-all. But there's a big difference between sharing with someone who can hold your truth steady and dumping your heart to those incapable or unwilling to receive without judgment. Some people, even close ones, aren't truly listening deeply. Their internal noise is too loud to hear what you're really saying. And when you push harder to make them understand, when you prod, explain, or repeat hoping they'll get it, you don't feel closer, you feel more alone. I know a young man who finished therapy, finally feeling clarity after years of inner turmoil. One afternoon, he tried sharing a piece of that healing journey with colleagues. Just a small insight, a subtle shift he was proud of, but their responses weren't what he expected. One yoked, another gave a fleeting smile, another nodded politely, then changed the topic. They meant no harm, but the message was clear. This wasn't the right space. That moment didn't just silence him, it reminded him that emotional depth needs a fitting container. If you pour into the wrong vessel, the essence is lost, or, worse, invalidated. Stoics don't tell you to stay silent forever, but to be discerning. Epictetus taught that to grow, you must be willing to be misunderstood and preserve your peace from those unable to grasp your path. Not because they're bad, but because they might not be ready, willing, or aware. Some truths are like seeds, needing time and skillful planting. If you toss them on barren ground, they won't sprout. And if you force them into conversation, they might get trampled before taking root. Your inner life isn't public property. It's not a marketplace. And you have no obligation to explain your healing, decisions, or emotional growth to anyone who hasn't earned your trust. Sharing isn't always strength. Sometimes, sharing too freely is self-sabotage. You'll feel exposed, misunderstood, drained, and abandoned. That's why emotional boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. You don't build them to push people away. You build them to protect what's growing. So next time you want to open up, ask, why am I sharing this? Is it because I trust this person, or because I don't want to carry the emotion alone? If the latter, write it down. Sit with it. Let it settle in silence first. Because the truth is, not everyone deserves to hold your most fragile parts. And you owe yourself not to give away the sacred just because someone is convenient or familiar. Protect your energy in the Stoic way. Not everyone needs to know what you're healing. Not everyone can meet you where you stand. And that's perfectly fine. Your strength lies not in how loudly you share, but in how wisely you choose when to speak and who truly is ready to listen. When you stop needing everyone to understand, you free yourself to grow uninterrupted. That freedom comes from discernment. Once you grasp this, you'll stop seeking the right ears and start listening to yourself more closely. 7. Speak less. Act more. There's a type of fatigue not from hard work. It comes from hearing people talk endlessly about what they'll do but never follow through. You've heard it too many times. I'll eat healthier. I'll apply for jobs next week. This time I'm serious. They say it with conviction, sometimes excitement, but days pass, weeks pass, and everything stays the same. Over time, those words lose weight, not from bad intent, but from lack of real action behind them. Words without action are like smoke without fire. It looks like something's happening, but there's no substance, no heat, not transformation. That's why your silence can be more powerful than others' promises. You don't need to announce plans to the world for them to become real. You don't need to vent about changes or convince others this time is different. Just do it. Rise early and start your morning routine. Build discipline quietly. Change not because you said you would, but because something inside won't let you stay the same. In that space, where action replaces explanation, your life takes shape. Think of someone you deeply respect, not for their words, but for how they show up. Maybe he never talked about changing, but he changed. You see it in his steady gait, full listening, and quiet, confident presence. His discipline isn't loud. It radiates. No posts, no speeches, no declarations. Just the energy of someone who's done the work without needing or seeking recognition. That's the presence people remember. That's the presence that builds true respect. Stoics were never impressed by eloquent talkers. They didn't chase admiration through poetic proclamations. They lived simply with inner harmony, intentional action, and few words. Epictetus made it clear: words without action are just noise. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful in Rome, didn't write to be quoted. He wrote to hold himself accountable to his values. He never had to publicly declare he was self-improving. He simply did it. Over time, the result wasn't a louder voice, but a stronger soul. When you constantly talk about what you're doing, planning, hoping, you're expending energy in the wrong place. Instead of building something enduring and unshakable, you get caught in performing progress. And that performance eventually fades. What's enduring is the quiet, persistent effort, the kind that matters even without witnesses, the kind that doesn't demand applause to feel valuable. It builds a resilient mindset you carry regardless of who's watching. Next time you want to explain what you're doing, let your actions speak instead of words. Let the results, discipline, and subtle shifts in how you respond convey the message. If someone asks, smile. You don't owe anyone updates. You only owe yourself results. And those come not from talking more, but from doing more. Speak less. Not because you're hiding, but because you've outgrown the need to prove. Act more. Not for attention, but to live true to yourself. Let daily decisions build the foundation you stand on. You don't need to shout. You don't need to convince anyone. When the energy is real, it reveals itself. And when it does, it lasts long after words have faded. That's the essence of Stoic presence. Clear without clamor, committed without boast, and growth. So real, it doesn't need witnesses to know it's true. In a world addicted to noise, choosing to preserve your peace quietly is an act of genuine strength. The more you talk about struggles, growth, and goals, the more you risk turning evolution into performance. But when you steadfastly guard your energy in the Stoic spirit, when you stop oversharing your life and start living with quiet discipline, something remarkable happens. You stop reacting to every opinion, stop needing constant applause, and start feeling the power of internal growth and stillness. Stoicism teaches that emotional discipline, self-control, and mental clarity come not from talking much, but from doing much. Speak less, live more. Let your actions carry weight, because when you stop recounting everything, you reclaim your identity, not as someone trying, but as someone becoming, and the world will sense it without a word. If this message touches you, share your story in the comments. What have you stopped saying to others to protect your peace? What part of your life are you quietly building? Let us know below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more Stoic tools to train your mind daily and reset your mindset for real transformation.